What's up, guys? How are we all doing today? Okay, now gather up all horror fans, because today we're diving into one of the most loved franchises ever. Sam Raimi's Evil Dead has scared and captivated horror fans for a while now. We've seen the films and the Ash crossovers, but how many of you guys know about the comic? Yep, there's a comic. Evil Dead 2 didn't really end when the screen cut to black. The story continued with the comic Evil Dead 2 Beyond Dead by Dawn. And trust me, guys, this one's nightmare fuel too. If you thought Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell gave us enough chaos in the cabin, trust me, we're just getting started. But I will warn you, we're going to discuss the comic in a whole lot of detail, so there will be spoilers. Proceed at your own risk. So now, let's get started. Before I get into the story of the comic, let's just quickly recap what happened at the end of Evil Dead 2. I personally like the continuation, so I obviously rewatched Evil Dead 2 before reading the comics. But you guys don't need to worry, because I've got you. Okay, so we all know Ash, who takes his girlfriend Linda to this creepy old cabin, and of course, curiosity gets the better of them. They accidentally play a tape of Professor Noby where he recites passages from the Necronomicon. You know, the Book of the Dead. But turns out, it's actually an incantation that summons the ancient Kandarian demons. Oops. And then there's some crazy Deadite chaos. Linda gets possessed, and Ash has to fight her. Hell, he even had to cut off his possessed hand, remember? Like with a friggin' chainsaw. Honestly, one of the most iconic scenes in horror cinema ever, if you ask me. Eventually, Professor Noby's daughter Annie shows up with the missing pages of the Necronomicon. And she's all ready to create a portal and banish this evil away. But of course, it's not easy. While she does manage to open a vortex by reading passages from the book, she is stabbed in the back by Ash's severed hand. Crazy, right? With her dying breath, she manages to complete the ritual as the Deadites, as well as Ash, get sucked in. Sounds like the end of the story, right? Well, it's far from it. Yes, we see Ash end up in the Middle Ages, surrounded by a group of knights and whatnot. But what happens to Annie? The film doesn't really give us answers. They just declare her dead, I guess. But guess what? Annie isn't dead at all. In fact, she is quite undead, pun intended. She's alive and well as one can be in hell, I guess. And that's where the comics pick up. One thing that I actually really liked about the comics is that they gave us background and context. Issue 0 dives into the past and shows us what happened to Professor Noby and his wife Henrietta, how Noby unleashed evil beyond imagination, and the first victim it claimed was his wife. Sadly enough, he has to take her life by shooting her. Except that he doesn't kill her either, so he buries her and stabs her with the Kandarian dagger, since that's the only way to free people from the demons. Issue 1 then takes us to Annie, who's still excavating and digging at the ancient castle ruins of Kandar, and she becomes the narrator, the voice of the comic. And I absolutely loved how chilling it was. Within the first few pages, she talks about how she wasn't planning on dying that day and that she had big plans. She wanted to make a name for herself. That entire writing is spine-chilling. You feel what she's feeling. A girl who's lost both her parents. She tells us about Ash and how she planned to banish the demon. She recounted the story of what happened at that cabin and her final moments. She felt the dagger draining the life out of her, but she was wrong. Entirely wrong. She seemed dead, but 5 minutes later, everything changed. The ground beneath the cabin started moving and shaking until it was in free fall. And when it finally crashed and landed, Annie knew exactly where she was. Surrounded by fire and brimstone, she was in hell. And this isn't some symbolic hell either. It's the real deal. She is surrounded by literal Deadite demons. You know, like the red ones with devil horns and wings? Yep, those. She manages to fend one off with the Kandarian dagger that she still has on her, and the rest fly away. But Annie hears these piercing voices, voices that keep asking her for help, voices that sound like her mom and dad. The artwork in this panel is breathtaking. That was definitely one of the highlights when I flipped through the entire series. The artwork, the tone, the writing, it all echoes the hellish horror that Annie survives. She sees a vision of her parents trapped in the very depths of hell, surrounded by demons and Deadites. But she's shocked out of it as a demon picks her up and flies off. As she tries to wriggle out of its clutches, she uses the dagger and realizes that they're all afraid of its power. The demon deems her not worth the trouble and drops her from the sky. Her dagger has fallen down, and so is she. Believe it or not, that fall still doesn't kill her. Plot armor, I guess. But she's got to reach that dagger fast before the Deadites swarm her again. Snatching it from the demon it impaled, she demands, "Who do you serve?" That's when we discover what Annie must face. Her true purpose, her driving goal, the force threatening to devour her parent's soul. The swallower of souls, Rabisu. Interestingly enough, the dagger was now charged with energy, and so was Annie. Her spunk and confidence had returned as she prepared for what lay ahead, but she couldn't do it alone. And then, surprise, surprise, Ash's severed hand shows up in hell and spooks the hell out of Annie. This gives her one hell of an idea. She opens up the Necronomicon, which she still has, phew, and remembers that there was something about creating a simulacrum. What's a simulacrum, you ask? It's a doppelganger that has to be made from the flesh of the original body. Basically, it's full-on necromancy. The spell required a shedding of blood, and she confidently sliced her hand, as her blood dripped onto Ash's severed hand. There was only one thing she needed, a whole lot of magical energy. Now, if you guys have been following me till now, you already know where she's getting the energy from. The dagger, of course. Turns out the dagger's power increases with every demon it kills, and its power is connected to the Necronomicon. So she stabs the hand with the dagger, and boom, there's a surge of energy. And out emerges a doppelganger of Ash. Annie successfully manages to create the simulacrum, and Ash is back. Naturally, she has to sort of update him on everything that's happened, since he pretty much has no memory of the events since he cut off his hand. Ash tries his best to adjust to the hellish landscape with damned souls and bodies literally falling all around him. Can you blame the guy? What a nightmare, man. But since he technically doesn't have a soul, he's like the perfect candidate to help Annie. He's also bonded to her because he was created by her blood. And then there's this whole bit about how he's overly emotional because it's that time of month for her. But anyway, with Annie's blood running through him, he manages to kill his first fallen soul, which is this huge guy, practically a monster. Together, they also find the portal out of hell, but need virgin blood to get out. I must mention here that I loved the chemistry between Ash and Annie in the panels. Their comedic moments really shine through and cut the tension. But a few moments later, Ash suddenly goes all Deadite mode on Annie. Oops, spoke too soon, I guess. She does manage to fend him off and bring him back to his senses with a dagger, but not before having a mini existential crisis. Then they decide to split off as Ash goes off to fight Rabisu with a dagger and Annie stays at the portal to find a way out. I don't know how smart that was since Annie is basically defenseless now. But hey, I'm not going to go questioning our main character's choices. Ash is doing pretty well for himself though. He takes out yet another demon with a dagger. Ash 2, Demon 0, I guess. The rest of the demons fall in place and are actually amazed and fascinated by Ash and even low-key hail him as some sort of king. He demands to be taken to Rabisu and the demons comply. Hell, they fly him on their back on a chair. Crazy, right? And he finally reaches Rabisu. Meanwhile, Annie's trying to figure out the incantations from the Ex Mortis as bodies of the damned keep falling around her. But wait, remember she needed virgin blood? Well, all she had to do was find the right body. That's never been with another body. And oh boy, did she find the perfect person. An emo-looking guy who died of a peanut allergy. And guess what? He's never had sex because he's allergic to latex. Of course he is. What else do you expect from a satanic emo gamer virgin with pimples all over his face? She wastes no time and quickly slices his hand for some blood. Now she finally has everything she needs to open the portal. But does she really want to go back home? She questions what home remains for her, and if any of it truly matters. I loved these moments. These internal thoughts of both Annie and Ash really help flesh out the characters and give them depth. It helps the audience relate to them more, and I really liked that. On the other side of hell, Ash comes face to face with Rabisu, and being a charmer, he tries out some of his negotiating skills. He even threatens Rabisu that if he doesn't comply, he will send his horde of demons after him. Wow, this guy really has some balls. But it doesn't end well. I mean, come on. threatening a huge-ass demon like Rabisu. My guy obliterates that entire horde of demons in seconds. But Ash plays it real smart and slices up Rabisu's stomach with the dagger. Before my guy can even get a sentence out, he spills his guts everywhere, freeing all the souls he had trapped within him. And that was the end of Rabisu. Honestly, a little anticlimactic if you ask me. Now, Ash's task is to find Professor Nobi and Henrietta in a whole sea of souls. He does find them pretty quickly, but some of the others turn into deadites and attack them. Fortunately, they still have the dagger, and Professor Nobi swiftly uses it. Now, I know what you're thinking. All of this feels too easy, right? Well, surprise! Rabisu is still alive and kicking. Of course he is. As he attacks Ash and Nobi, Ash makes a very interesting move. He stabs Professor Nobi with the dagger. Rabisu eventually falls, weakened by the lack of souls. And he falls directly on Ash, who very smartly stabs him with the dagger. God knows how Ash managed to get out from under him, but fortunately, he does. Once he's all victorious, he notices that there's a huge tornado of energy coming from where Annie is supposed to be. He rushes back to her to find her elevated in the air, reading incantations from the Necronomicon. As she falls to the ground, he swiftly catches her in his arms. Together, they walk out of the portal, free from hell and right back to where it all started, the cabin in the woods. But where are her parents? Their souls are in that dagger, the same dagger that has so many souls, especially demonic ones. So that means Annie could free her parents and release their souls, but she would also inadvertently free all the other souls trapped within that dagger, especially all the demonic ones that had been killed and trapped over the years. Annie had to make a choice, and although she was reluctant at first, she decided to release the souls held within the Kandarian dagger. Brave choice, I must say. She says goodbye to her mom and dad as their souls are released, and Ash and Danny think that it's over, but it's far from over. In fact, it's just the beginning. You just don't release demonic souls without any horrible consequences, you know? And their story will continue in yet another comic series. We'll get to see Annie and Ash team up again to send the demonic souls back to where they came from in Evil Dead 2: Cradle of the Damned. And that's it. That's the end of Evil Dead 2: Beyond Dead by Dawn. So let me quickly give you guys my thoughts. I didn't think I'd get this invested in the comic. With the artwork and the writing, it really pulls you in. Plus, I personally loved the decision to shift the focus from Ash to Annie, making her the central character. Even when watching Evil Dead 2, I always felt like her character had so much to offer. I mean, she was literally Professor Nobi's daughter and one of the only two people who discovered the Necronomicon and could actually make sense of it. That seems like a super useful and dangerous skill to have. Her character felt well written. Like, you understand her motivations and everything she's already been through. I also loved the world building in hell. The panels looked really well done, and the landscapes genuinely gave that hell vibe, you know? Even if you guys do know the story now, I think you should definitely check out the comic purely for the artwork. And of course, Ash and Annie's duo was perfect. They were funny and sarcastic, and weirdly, perfectly in sync. What made me realize that I really liked the comic was that once it was over, once I'd finished issue 6, all I wanted to do was keep reading. Like, I started looking for Evil Dead 2: Cradle of the Damned. And I did find it, guys, so who knows, maybe we'll explore that one too. But meanwhile, let us know in the comments what your thoughts are if you've read the comic. So groovy. We'll see you soon. Goodbye.